So what's your first question I've got? What's your go-to supplement brand? Honestly, I stick to practitioner-based brands. So you're looking at your Designs for Health, Nutridyne, for the most part, Thorne Research, a little bit of Metagenics here and there. But for the most part, the vast majority of what I use is from Designs for Health. They have solid stuff. And from what I've been told, they've also got something in the works for everybody. That way, people who are drug tested, they'll be able to no problem use their stuff. So that's in the pipeline from DFH, from what I've been told. Every so often I'll use something from ATP Labs. I only really use a couple products for them. For the most part, I only use their Cinermag and their whey protein. The reason I use their whey protein is a good price point. It's not super expensive like some of the other brands for a whey protein. All right. Thoughts on supplementing with tryptophan? I've never done it. I've never really looked into it too much. I don't know if it really has that much credence overall. But like I said, I've never really looked into it or done it myself, so I don't have that much of an opinion on it. All right. Do I have a base supplement protocol for teen athletes? For the most part, it's the same as general population type people. If they're not eating well, first of all, supplements are only going to help them get to a baseline. And I basically like to stick to the basics here. So you're looking at your multivitamin, some fish oil, maybe a probiotic depending on the person. If it's time of year like we have here right now in Canada and it's cold, snowy, maybe supplementing some vitamin D plus K2. And magnesium's huge for teen athletes. As is, their diet is going to be deficient in it, and a lot of teen athletes, let's be honest, they eat like crap. So having a magnesium supplement is going to allow them to buffer their stores of magnesium, which will help them recover better. It's also going to help them to relax and calm down at the end of their workout so that they could get into that sympathetic state to be able to recover at a more optimal efficiency. All right, so during fat loss, high or low volume training? Fat loss, high volume training. Low volume, you're not going to get enough work in to really stimulate a growth hormone response or to get much lipolysis to happen. For you to really get into fat loss in a training perspective, you got to deplete the glycogen stores. You got to get lots of lactic acid buildup. Those glycogen stores, once they're used up, your body has to start breaking down fat storage and using that for energy. The primary source of energy that we use when we train is going to be glycolytic or sugars. You're going to use your sugar stores first because that's your strongest most readily available energy system. Hi, Angelique. Hopefully you're not complaining too much after your leg workout last night. So the high or low volume training when it comes to fat loss, low volume, you're not really going to be able to get enough total work in. Fat loss requires a high amount of work. Most people, let's be honest, do not do enough overall work for fat loss. They do moderate work, they don't actually lift enough weight, and they don't push themselves hard enough. You have to push yourself to that verge of almost nausea to truly get the best benefit and the most bang out of the workout for fat loss. This doesn't mean you have to completely destroy yourself. It just means you have to actually tax yourself. You have to bring yourself to that, your heart's pounding feeling. All right, so best method to overcome a hypertrophy plateau. This is coming from Giuseppe over in Italy. So one method I like to use for that, sometimes the person just needs the muscles to rest. So taking time off of a muscle group can actually be beneficial. But if you're looking for kind of different training methods or rep schemes, I just did an 8x8, and the pump type of feeling you get from that is insane. You don't need very much work. You literally do 8 sets of 8 with 30-second rest, and you're blasted out by the end. You could also do what Charles Poliquin really popularized is the German volume training, the 10 sets of 10. For someone who's a little bit more advanced even, if they've done 10 by 10 in the past, doing 10 by 6, 10 by 4 even. Take a look at the type of person they are. If they're the type of person who thrives, so it might be a time that you break down and you do a maximal strength phase at the beginning, and then you finish the workout off with high volume. So say you start off with 5 sets of 5, and you go into doing, throughout the workout, you move up to doing your 10 to 12 rep range, your 12 to 15s, your 20 plus rep ranges. Some people are going to need that. So there is no singular best method for overcoming hypertrophy plateau. There's multiple different ways of doing it. Like I said, sometimes it's rest for a muscle group. It needs to recover. Sometimes it's you need to just simply get stronger. Remember, at a certain point, the muscle isn't going to grow unless it gets stronger. So you have to kind of give it a kick in the ass for it to get stronger, which is going to force it to then grow a little bit. That's really, in terms of hypertrophy plateaus, all I can really think of. You could also try changing up the diet on someone. You can get it so that... okay, so I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. When it comes to the diet, you can get it so that the person is a little bit lower carb for a little while to get them a little bit more resensitized to carbohydrate intake. And then you can jack up the carbs nice and high so that they're really engorging the muscle with glycogen, and it's going to, any pump they get, they're just going to look massive with that extra pump. That's one of the things that bodybuilders do leading into a show. They cut out their carbs so that they become more carb sensitive to it the day before going into a show. And then when they quote unquote carb up, all of a sudden their muscles are nice and full and jacked looking. You can use this as well with a person trying to overcome a hypertrophy plateau, because it's going to make the muscle sensitive to the carbohydrate or the glycogen, and as it's pulled into the cell, it's going to push the muscle cell to its limit of size. All right, so sprinting speed start is good. Okay, so I got this from someone out in Alberta. He sent me a message on exactly. Oh, okay, so for Melissa's asking a question, would carb cycling do the same? Not really. Carb cycling is going to be more so for fat loss, more so than hypertrophy. Carb cycling, it has its merits, but you don't get enough of a complete cut out and then carb up, and you can't do the carb up too frequently. Yes, so a period of complete depletion would be exactly what I'm talking about here. So it would be like you're doing regular training for several weeks, and then you move into doing zero carb for a couple of days, so you cut it right out. And the muscles, when you're working them in that glycolytic energy system, they're screaming for glucose. So then when you get it so that they're not getting enough glucose, and then all of a sudden you reincorporate glucose in, or sugar back in, carbs back into their nutrition, boom, they're going to suck that right up into their bodies, and then their body's going to look engorged. All right, so back to the question here. Sprinting speed start is good. Cycling speed from 15 to 30 meters and slower. All right, so the question that got kind of extrapolated or expanded on had to do with the person is working with a sprinter. So their starting speed, getting out of the blocks, is good. Their 0 to 15 is good, and then after that they kind of fall apart a little bit. So one thing to look at when it comes to this is their strength through their hips. A lot of people they might be good at extending and getting out of the blocks and extending themselves out nice and long, but then all of a sudden when they start to transition from that initial drive phase and start to transition to standing upright, they end up sitting down. So you got to look at, are they actually strong through their glutes and low back, as well as their abdomen. If they've got weak abs, they're not going to be able to keep themselves in a good position. And as soon as their position is compromised during a drive phase, which can extend to 30, even 40, 45 meters, if their positioning is compromised, they will collapse down and they're going to sit, which is going to cause them to look like they decelerate, especially if they're in a field with other athletes who can accelerate through that because they have good relative strength through their core, their abdomen, so their abs, obliques, glutes, low back. And then as they're getting as they're standing up, take a look at, are they collapsing at the knees? Are they collapsing because they've got weak calves? Or is it actually coming right from the foot? So one thing to take a look at is the actual mobility of the big toe, the great toe. If that toe doesn't have good mobility, as soon as they start to extend out further and further, they're going to compromise their position. They're going to end up sitting. It's strange how it happens. Something else to look at in terms of this strength-wise is doing some single leg work. Single leg stuff like step-ups are really good for this. You don't necessarily need to do really high box step-ups. It can be something as low as 4 to 6 inches, but with some heavy loads. So you're talking even 2 times body weight on the bar, just doing a very short step-up. If you look at Altus, they have Dan Pfaff a couple of years ago was working with Olympic champion Greg Rutherford. I hope I didn't butcher his name because he's one of the best long jumpers that we've had in the last decade. But he was doing short step-ups with something like 500 or 600 pounds, and there's no way he weighed more than 200 pounds. So it's possible to do very heavy loads with the short box step-ups. And then when it comes to this, just to make things simple, just take a look at when they start to collapse, and if something else just taking a look from the naked eye is causing an issue with the athlete. If it's something else causing the issue, like do they have balance issues once they start to accelerate, or do they just have issues transitioning, or is it a technical issue that's coming up? Because with a lot of people, sprinting is actually far more technical than people give it credit. People just think, oh, you just run like hell from 0 to 100. Yeah, but there's a high technical component to that. If someone's a better technical sprinter than someone else, they're going to end up spending less energy, being more efficient, and they're going to run a lot faster. What made Bolt so fast? Yeah, he's 6'6", his strides are 3 meters long, but he's very technically efficient through the air as well as on the ground. Hopefully this answered your question. If it didn't give you a solid answer on it, just send me a DM, comment on the video once it's up on YouTube as well, and I can try to answer it a little bit better. Other than that, hopefully everyone has a good, strong Friday lift today, and enjoy the weekend. Hopefully, if you're in Canada, we're starting to get a little nicer weather coming up. For everyone else, hopefully everything's treating you well where you are. Remember, lift strong, lift hard, give yourselves a good weekend, and until next time, Coach Tony. Alright, thank you for watching right to the end of this video. If you'd like to see more content by me, click the subscribe button here, and for another YouTube suggested video by me, click here. And if you liked what you saw today, don't forget, click the little like button below. Until next time, Coach Tony, Risling Podium Performance.